people who are talking about electric cooking, modern energy cooking, and the implications and how to help more people to benefit from its potential. A big concern that everyone would have if they're going to consider shifting how they cook is whether they can continue to deliver the same quality of cooked dish as they currently do with their more familiar fuels and methods. So this session today is going to discuss that. We have some very good experts to help us to think this through. And Shital of Finovista is going to facilitate the panel discussion. I'll just say a little bit more about Modern Energy Cooking Services Programme. So we are a UK government-funded programme working with partners across the Global South to build a research and understanding about how we can support a shift away from how polluting fossil fuels, solid fuels, and we have a particular interest in energy-efficient electric cooking, which is, we believe, increasingly an option for many households and can save them money and achieve a lot of other benefits from them, as well as helping their air to be much healthier. As mentioned, part of the programme is this talk series, and it's become a growing and well-established element that really supports the conversation about lots of different topics. If you would like to hear earlier discussions, they're all available through YouTube. You should be able to find them through our website or through Finovista. And this is increasingly international, with people listening from around the world and contributing their ideas and input. Today's session, as I said, is going to focus on taste. If you are joining us for the first time, or you are there and would like to be known, put your contact details in the chat, let us know who you are, and then maybe that could lead to some conversations of like-minded people. Or if you disagree with anything, or you question anything, or you want to ask something, put that in the chat, and I'm sure the panelists will be happy to respond. The MECS team at Finovista in India have been doing a lot in the space of cooking in terms of practical experience of how people cook. And this is a slide that just describes some of the examples of that. So there was a National Street Food Festival in Delhi where Finovista arranged for a number of the street food chefs to have electric cooking devices, and also for members of the public to experience the food that was produced. And as you can see, got really good response. People felt the food was very good quality, very happy with it. Similarly, in other locations around India, we've experienced people cooking with electricity, and the feedback is always that it's very good quality, no noticeable impact. And this is often a surprise. People think that you need to be able to have a flame to get the cooking result you want. So we're optimistic that there's real potential here. Just a flag and a little bit of promotion. We are planning an event in the end of September at the India Habitat Centre in Delhi, where we're going to be bringing together everyone across the community, whether they're cooking appliance suppliers, whether they're people looking to buy appliances, whether they're NGOs, government organisations, and we hope to have some senior speakers in this post-election period. But you can register now, and we will give you more details nearer the time. So I'm going to hand over shortly. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and introduce our first panelist, who is someone I've worked with for quite a few years now. He's a great guy, Mr. Jacob Fodio Todd, who is a research associate at GAMOS, working on the MECS programme. He's had a number of roles in that capacity. He is himself a trained chef and has worked on multiple food projects in the past, including authoring the Ground Nut Cookbook, which is a food from across Africa in 2016. Within MECS, he leads our culinary strands, and in particular, he has led the work developing e-cookbooks, which is an intervention that we have now in just about every country we go into. because it's a good way of getting a grounding in the cooking culture in that country and the implications and impact for the householder if they shift to electric. He holds an MSc in Environment and International Development from the University of East Anglia. So I will hand over to Jacob and invite him to share his thoughts on this topic. Over to you, Jacob.
Thanks, Nick, and thanks to the team for inviting me. I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone see it? Is that visible, full screen?
Yes, it is.
Great, thanks. So so my name's Jacob Fodu-Todd. I'm a researcher at MECS, Gamos, based in the UK. Like Nick says, I've worked as a chef in Paris and London. I run a food business working with chefs from a range of different backgrounds and different regional foods. And I also published a cookbook with African food and African diasporic cooking, featuring a lot of that knowledge has been used to create some of these e-cookbooks, which Nick's mentioned, and I recommend you seek those out to get a sense of the things we're doing in that space if you haven't already seen them. So I just wanted to share some of the knowledge learned about cooking with electricity and some of the taste considerations. So I guess just a few things to kind of set the scene, some of which Nick's mentioned. So it's e-cooking or electric cooking is a relatively recent cooking technology. In places with high electricity access, it was popularized sort of in the 60s and the 70s. And then there's loads of opportunities, of course, now with expanding electricity access and lots of innovations in the types of appliances which are available. Gas stoves invented around the 1800s, as far as I'm aware, so been around for 200 so years. But that pales in comparison to wood and charcoal, which has been cooked on and used for millennia, and other forms of solid biomass. And one of the things that Nick mentioned, a lot of these solid biomass and traditional fuels create visible fire, and it's that fire which is then used to cook, to heat a vessel, such as the two pictures which are on screen now. So some wood being used to heat a vessel which has got oil in it, and then some LPG or gas used to heat a pan. When it comes to electricity, we're not seeing the flames. We're using the picture in the left. So the induction is usually just to heat the pan directly, and I can explain this as lots of implications as to how things change with taste. And this is a picture of someone cooking using EPC there. So cooking is complex. It's, for me, it's an art and a science, and it's very cultural. There's lots of subjectivity to different foods and to taste. Some of it's to do with ingredients, so choosing the right ingredients and the right spices and the right combination, and the time you use to deal with each one. But the cooking process is critically important, and that's something within the MECS program, and particularly within the work I've been involved with, the MECS culinary team. We've adopted an approach which seeks to make it more manageable. So to try and manage this huge complexity. So the main way we've done that is through the cooking typologies approach, which I'll explain in a minute. Excuse me. And there's many different cooking materials as well as cooking processes, of course. So different styles of pans and different materials create different outcomes. And some of these cooking processes are better suited to electricity, to electric cooking devices and appliances than others. Again, I'll get into this shortly. So some recent research we did in Nepal, this is in a commercial and institutional setting, is to use some ethnographic data and some surveys to determine what was being cooked. So there's a whole range of different cooking processes and methods used in these different settings. We've done similar sorts of things in the household, of course, as well, but this is just some of the most recent stuff. So I thought I'll present this. So you can see there's deep frying, roasting, pressure cooking, but by and large, the two most popular ones for these institutions and are very commonly used are frying and boiling or steaming. And this has massive implications. Why is it important? Because it has massive implications on taste and taste profiles. It has huge influence on how things come out. So I'll talk about those top two, which it varies where you go, so it's not conclusive. But I think these are useful two useful points to illustrate some of the impacts on taste. So frying, there's a few different derivatives of frying, different styles of frying. There's shallow frying, which is cooking food in oil. So in that picture, it's a bit small perhaps, but that's some guinea fowl being cooked on a pan. You can see that it's just one surface which is in contact with the pan really, and there's a little bit of oil that's being used to cook it. The stir frying, which is a far larger, higher heat, and you cook it cooked far more quickly often. And it's things like deep frying, so it's a large quantity of oil, sort of like boiling in oil, but the oil gets hotter than the water can, so it starts around 160 to 180 plus degrees, and that has this great impact where it can make the outside crispy, whereas the inside remains moist and soft. So something like a donut, or beignet, which is being cooked there in the bottom right. So how does that impact taste? Well, frying develops flavor often. So you're cooking in oil firstly or in fats. That gives it a richer flavor. So adding the flavor of the fat or the oil you use, and it has this impact because creates this Maillard reaction, which I'm not a food scientist, so this is learned, but I've seen it in practice in working in kitchens and so forth. So this is a collaborative process between proteins and carbohydrates under the influence of high heat, which leads to the production of all these different flavor compounds, which give food its great taste, and also can change the color of food to create that browning. So you can see the donuts are starting to brown. They're clearly uncooked there, but then they will brown. There's things like caramelization as well, which is with sugar, high content sugars. You start to get a caramel flavor or sweet and nutty flavor. There's also burning and charring, which is also depending on where you live and what you like to eat, is also an attractive thing to have. So something like a bread with slight char or slight char on certain vegetables is increasingly has always been an attractive kind of flavor profile, a little bitterness. There's boiling. I think boiling is a particularly important cooking process because a lot of staple foods are cooked using boilings or using boiling or derivatives of boiling. So a lot of the staples are often eaten multiple times a day on lots of different menus. So you might have, rice and potatoes, wheat, breads, and a lot of the staples are cooked using boiling. So things like rice, potatoes, pasta, and noodles. And boiling is simply getting water to 100 degrees and then cooking ingredients within it. And the water can only get to 100 degrees or so. So you can get to 100 degrees at sea level, and will cook in a certain way. You can also use it for beans, legumes, dals, soups, stews. And that impact that has on taste largely is it cooks it quite evenly. So it's a multi-directional heat, so it's contained with water. So the heat's coming from all different directions. It can't get above 100 degrees unless it's touching the bottom of the pan, because at that point water turns into steam. In some ways it creates a softer flavor, so there's no carbonization, no Maillard reaction, like I was explaining. And in some places the flavor might go, so some of the liquid might go into the water, and if you don't use the water, then you get rid of some of the nutrients. But in other ways, it can preserve nutrients because you're not getting to quite such a high temperature, and you're treating it less aggressively. So something like a rice cooker, when it comes to eCooking and different cooking processes, something like a rice cooker is an extremely popular appliance that has taken over a huge portion of lots of people's diets in places where rice is a staple. So East Asia, South Asia, other regions of the world, it's an enormously popular appliance and has evolved from sort of a very conventional tool, which was perhaps used using clay pots and biomass or LPG or other forms of gas, but now is evolved to be extraordinarily advanced. So there's simple mechanical ones where you use electricity. It's now using AI and all sorts of different variables. And it means they're very simple to use, very convenient, and they're time and energy efficient. As evidenced by its popularity, it creates great results with seemingly marginal differences, or marginal difference between how you might traditionally have cooked it and how it's been adopted. So something like a rice cooker is, I think, a great example of a success story in the electric cooking world. This is very specific kind of. This is just a portion of the menu. So yeah, just to conclude, because I'm realize I'm running out of time, and then really good to, I'm looking forward to hearing the exchange and seeing what other panelists and the audience have to contribute, because this is a very, like I said, complex and interesting area. So there's lots of different ways of cooking, and like I said, some have more advantages than others. eCooking, the rice cooker being a great example. And although behavioural change might be required at certain times, people are accustomed to adjusting with the way things are made, adopting or embracing new ingredients and different ways of doing things. So that's something I've come across throughout what the MECS program is. It's fascinating to see how people have evolved from using different fuels and different appliances, even prior to electric cooking. So in certain countries, if you move from a rural area to an urban area, you might just have a natural change and start cooking with these different fuels and appliances. So I think as much as food traditions are very fixed in many ways, and there's lots of conservatism when it comes to cooking, there's also lots of incremental, small and large change. And often the taste is marginal. I think I hope we can talk more about kind of actual, some more the taste profiles and the way things are cooked. But the other considerations beyond the taste. So taste is not you can't isolate taste in the way you might consider it, because people smell creates smell is part of the reaction to it. You might be sight, so if you see a flame, you might have a certain reaction to it. So there's lots of other things which impact the taste, but from our research and our findings, people have embraced e-cooking appliances, and the taste different has been deemed to be fairly marginal. And often they're surprised by how much you can cook using electric cooking appliances, and how you can really cook the food that you previously used to cook in new electric cooking appliances. There's difficulties, obviously, something like a barbecue cooking or cooking directly over fire. So if you want to char an aubergine or get that flame onto some ingredients, very difficult to replicate without fire. But for a huge proportion of cooking, so things like boiling, like I've explained, there's not only is it possible, there's lots of serious advantages from cooking with e-cooking. So the rice cooker, again, a good example, an electric pressure cooker, where you have thermostats and timers, other forms of automation, which make it convenient and efficient. And you don't have, seemingly from our research and from what people have told us and what Nick mentioned, there's very little difference in taste, or none at all. There's great opportunities. Again, with frying, slightly more complex perhaps than boiling, because different temperature ranges and different ways of doing things, different pans and pots and so forth. Like I explained, there's things like induction stoves. So some of the latest generation induction stoves are fantastically fast at getting to really high heats and heating cooking pots and pans in fantastic ways, which is replicable to how people are accustomed to cooking, perhaps on LPG or on other fuels. APCs, hot plates have had challenges, and I've worked with hot plates a fair bit, and they do have their challenges, but things like infrared and these other newer technologies, and it is very much an evolving field. There's always new technology coming to the market and ways of different ways of cooking. So yeah, it'd be interesting to hear what others' experiences are, and have some questions and challenges to some of the ways that cooking has come about. I haven't mentioned roasting and deep fat frying and baking, grilling. There's lots of inroads in these areas with e-cooking appliances as well. So electric ovens and deep frying. If you have a dedicated deep fat fryer, the heating element can be in the oil, whereas if you cook with LPG, often you're just heating a vessel. You have to heat the vessel because you can't have fire and hot oil together. So I think I'll stop there. I guess there's just one more slide which might be interesting to show something we've developed for other work, which is just to show the variety of different appliances and all these different techniques which you can apply in these different appliances. So things like EPC, air fryer, which is being popularized a lot in my social circle at the moment. People are talking about air fryers a lot. And yes, but so I think there's lots of opportunities. There are, of course, some challenges, but yes, as far as I've been exposed to, there's lots of exciting things to talk about, and look forward to hearing from others. I will stop there, I think, and pass
Thank
it over to Sheetal. Is that
I will
appropriate
introduce
to stop?
Sheetal. That's fine. Thanks, Jacob. That's great.
All right. Oh, great. Thanks.
Brilliant. So
Yes.
that was good setting the scene. It's a complex area. We won't complete the discussion today. We'll just sort of open up some of the topics. It's an evolving area as well. As Jacob said, there's a lot of new technologies being brought to the market, and that means that things that might previously not have been possible are now increasingly possible. And also chefs, as we're going to be hearing, are experimenting and discovering new ways of achieving the flavors they love through different devices. Okay, we've got some people coming into the chat, so do come in. If you see a question that you can add an answer to, then respond. Let us know who you are. But I'm now going to hand over to Sheetal, who is the co-founder of Finovista and has become a good friend as we worked together over the years. Sheetal holds over 15 years of experience in developing strategy and execution roadmaps for new business initiatives. She has a diverse background of working with leading firms in banking, finance, manufacturing, and specialty retail. At Finovista, Sheetal has been leading strategy and program execution and has led the execution of multiple innovation, support, and entrepreneurship development programs on a range of different themes. And under the MECS program in India, Sheetal has been instrumental in leading the execution of various initiatives, such as the talk series and the Modern Energy Cooking Forum, and is a key person in helping us to set up the Women in Modern Energy Cooking community. So I'm going to hand over to Sheetal, who will manage the rest of the session. Thank you, Sheetal.
Thank you, Nick. Thanks for the introduction, and thanks, Jacob, for setting the scene so well today and explaining us about the outcomes and different processes in e-cooking. And I could particularly pick up on something that you mentioned, which is cooking is very complex. And of course, we all know that the outcome is dependent on multiple variables. And when I talk about a country like India, where the taste is at the heart of all the cooking practices, and we have such a diverse culinary tradition that when we move from one region to another, the ingredients, cooking practices, the cuisines, everything changes. So it becomes all the more complex. And while working with you on the India eCookbook, it was a great experience, and we had our own set of learnings with respect to the outcomes that could achieved on e-cooking various dishes, and we could clearly see that how steam cooked food, pressure cooked foods, and heavy foods had a great outcome. And because of the even heating, we could achieve the kind of taste which was like perfectly simmered. But we also understand that there are challenges with processes like roasting. In India, we have a lot of dishes which are tandoor based, and like you mentioned, the smoky flavor that you achieve by cooking with wood and charcoal, of course, is something which misses on in e-cooking. Uh, but I would like to hear from a panel of experts that we have today. And, it's very interesting that today we have people from, the hospitality fraternity. So I would like to call upon Ms. Tanya Joshi, our first panelist today for the panel discussion, who's from the Indian Federation of Culinary Association. And she's, people know her by Chef TJ, and she belongs to Uttarakhand and has been born and brought up in Delhi. Has won the title of the most promising chef 2020 at IHM Pusa. And she started her career in 2020 with a great mentorship of Chef Sabi Kurai. And currently, she's an integral part of the core team and leading various projects of repute like JW Marriott, Taj Hotels, etc. And she's majoring in Indian regional food, uh, and she's also won the top 5 in the National Italian Flour competition and recently won Red Gold Tomato competition. And she's been featured on TV through a show called Chef versus Fridge, where she was among the top 4 chefs. So, Tanya, welcome to the talk series. And I would like to understand from you that being the expert in cooking, when we talk about e-cooking, what are your initial thoughts? And then I'll come back to you with a couple of questions that I have. But how do you see that when the regular people, when we're cooking at LPG and other cooking technologies, vis-a-vis cooking on e-cooking, what do you see as challenges and where do you see the difference being? Yeah.
Thank you, Sheetal, for the lovely introduction, and thank you everybody for joining in. I have been thinking about the e-cooking and how I relate to cooking on electric. I have a beautiful story. So 10 years back, we got an induction gift from somebody in our home, and my grandmother was very excited to see what is this. And when we told her you can cook food on this, she was amused. But how can you not light a fire and just by switching on one plug point you can actually cook? So and 1 year later, that became her favorite cooking instrument. And till now, my family cannot do. They can do without a stove, but they cannot do without induction. She has to make her daily tea 5 times a day on that induction, and she is now 75 plus. So I think that story itself tells you a lot. She is, so as you said that I'm from Uttarakhand, so she has a background of burning charcoal wood and coal and cooking food on that. So from there to using induction to make her daily tea, it's a behavioral change which is required in the people more than anything else. Today, we use almost all the equipments which are electric to cater to all our big events. Even there have been times we have cooked for 500, 600 people at a go, and we haven't used flame for various reasons. The reasons could be a lot in those situations, but what I can say from my professional point of view is that taste is there if your behavioral change and your attitude is right. It is not a matter of that we will get the taste or not. Like you were discussing about tandoor. So initially tandoor used to be wood and charcoal, and then in Delhi now we cannot use wood and charcoal tandoor in any of our restaurants. So it has to be gas fired or from LPG. And till date, you find it difficult for the cooks, the local cooks who are working in kitchens, to adapt to using LPG because they still are stuck to using wood tandoor. They think that the food won't be great. But today, whatever food you eat in any restaurant in New Delhi, they're all coming from gas-fired tandoor, including Bukhara, ITC Bukhara, including a restaurant as high graded as that. So it's a complete behavioral change. And when we talk about electric appliances, they're absolutely our favorite because the amount of convenience you get is amazing. You can have a rice cooker, you can put everything together, you can switch it on and you forget it. You can get your sleep also, and it will automatically get switched off or it'll go on to the warm setting and your food won't be burned. Which means with the modifications and with more electric equipments coming in the scene, we are also adding more technology for our own ease, which every year we're seeing are getting better and better. And India, being in India, most of our food is coming in one pot. We are cooking mostly curries or gravies or whatever we eat at home. It's one pot cooking. It's not a style where we are grilling chicken on the side. We're having a sauce. We're having vegetables. This is not our food, right? That's a little different. So our kind of cuisine can beautifully be converted to electric cookers, inductions. In fact, I was thinking that these days, if you go to Subway, you'll see that they have the small oven which they use. It's called as Mary Chef. The technology today is so high, they just have to press one. And if you order for some XYZ dish from their menu, the one will be automatically adjusted to that. So that setting is already done. It's inserted to that oven through a pen drive. So the amount of convenience you have got, and you just have to tell your employee now. You don't have to tell them the recipe. You just have to tell them press one, it will heat automatically. Press two, it will steam automatically. And all those programs are already done by the corporate companies. Similarly, we have electric fires now coming in, where you just have to press 1, 2, 3, 4, and accordingly, whatever you're putting it in, it'll start buzzing alarm that it's fried. It'll come up. It'll have all the functions. Basically, your food will need less attention of yours. You will be having more convenience in the terms. You will not be always struggling for LPG, cylinder, gas, and you'll be much more at ease. Even when we go for picnics on a daily basis, not as a professional chef, we love to carry our rice cookers and inductions because you might not find LPGs everywhere, but you just have to switch on one button. In fact, very funny situation happened today. So we were cooking a couple of things in the kitchen right before this talk, and our electricity went off for almost 1.5 hours. I was struggling. I was like, what do I do now? Because you have to grind something, you have to steam something, something has to be done in the oven. So we are already so used to cooking with electric equipments, from our silbattas to moving towards mixer grinders. Uh, in these small ways, if we see, we're already very intertwined with using electrical appliances. So I was laughing and thinking that I have to speak about e-cooking, and right now I don't have electricity, and I'm trying to figure out the ways how to cook without electricity. And we just had to wait that, okay, let the electricity come. And the moment it came, I'm like, okay, now we can cook. And then, so that is the dependence we have on electricity. If you talk about one challenge which I feel is that it's very like, for example, my village, it doesn't have stable electric connection till date. It's in some narrow roads of Uttarakhand. So there, if you think of using electric equipment, that could be a little, it might take a little while to reach there for us. But in urban cities, I think we're very good to go. We have so many smart appliances. Even roti, who could ever think that you can make fulka without putting on the gas fire? And now we're making fulkas on electric inductions, tawas. You have roti tawas, which are electric charged and electric fired. You don't have to use LPG anymore. So it's absolutely amazing how every year we're seeing something new happening, and so many things are happening. We can't even imagine that, okay, this is now going to happen next. Our pizza ovens have changed from wood and slowly going to gas. I'm sure the electric version will come very soon. So a lot of such changes are coming, not just in professional kitchens, also in the home kitchens. And I am telling it from my experience, how I see my family cooking. So it's absolutely stunning how things are slowly changing. And I think we're ready for this revolution now.
Thanks, Tanya. Thanks for highlighting that. And if I ask you that, like, if you could comment upon, like, flavors, how do you see that faring with our methods of cooking with LPG or the traditional ways vis-a-vis e-cooking? Do you think that people in households require a specific technique to achieve the similar taste when doing with e-cooking, or yeah?
So I'll give a very simple example. When you move from one car to another car, you drive it for 1 week, and you know the various functions, and you know how smooth is the steering or how smooth is the clutch and the brake. Or when you move from manual to automatic, it takes a week's time or a month's time to get adjusted. It's exactly the same. You need it's the skills don't really change much. Flavors don't change. Nothing changes. It's just the attitude, the behavior, and you have to be open and adaptive to use it. Yes, in some cases it might be a little slow. In some cases it might be faster. Like the heavy inductions we get right now, you can boil 10 liters of water under 2 to 3 minutes, which is crazy. So you have to attend to that. But if you use the small domestic induction, it might take a while. Um, Except those variations, I don't see a lot of differences in terms of taste and flavors. In fact, I believe that taste and flavors are better retained because the electric cooking is governed, right? It's governed by technology. There's less possibility of burning things. Like I said, rice cooker, it'll automatically get switched off, which means the food won't burn. It's closed. It's at a particular temperature, which is all done and already fed into the rice cooker. But if your pressure cooker, you forget it or you let it go for 2 whistles more, your dal or chicken or whatever you're cooking, it can get a little mushy. It can burn. The water can evaporate. So those things are always happening when you're using fire for the food or the manual way of cooking. Electric way is much more governed with technology. So when we are talking about convenience, we also should understand that electric equipments are coming with such factors, such technology, which are helping us getting less involved with the food. And now we can have more of a mental space that, okay, this thing won't get burned. Okay, if you're putting something into the fryer, the moment it is fried, the basket will automatically come up, which is a great revolution in terms of kitchens, professional kitchens. So I think it's a behavioral change. Like I mentioned, the example of tandoor. One first time when we told in one of our clients' kitchen that we need to change this from wood to LPG, the chef's questioned that will the smoky flavor be there even after we change, or a couple of things like that. So, and we had to do a couple of trials to show them that it won't really change. It's still the same. Uh, Worst case, if you want, smoky flavor, you have so many smoke liquids coming. You can do the dhua technology, dhua thing we do. You burn the coal and you put it for marination. There's so many techniques to achieve that. Not necessarily we have to talk about using fire for cooking.
Thanks, Tanya. I'll come back to you with more questions, and also understand that the shift that you mentioned from the fire-based cooking to now shift to LPG and getting the same flavors of tandoor over now. How will it fare well when we transition to e-cooking? And the other aspects that people say that and even Jacob also mentioned that in his conversation, that when we are frying, though we see a lot of temperature controls which are there on induction, but how's the outcome? So I'll leave you with that thought, and I'll go to our next panelist, and I'll come back to you on that very soon. So yeah, with that, I'll invite Miss Tanya Bhatia, who's the founder of Grace Kitchen. She's a food content creator and a cooking instructor. Tanya, I loved your Instagram page, and it's amazing. And Tanya is a recipe creator, food photographer, and stylist with over 100 plus brands. She's been featured on Asian Food Network, NDTV India, Times Now, Google, and many platforms. And she now creates content on her Instagram page, which goes by the name of @Grace Kitchen underscore TGK. And yeah, sharing her knowledge on baking skills, which she loves to do. And she's trained over 5,000 plus bakers. Tanya, hi, welcome to the talk series, which is focused upon taste, and we are trying to understand it from the perspective of e-cooking. And we like to hear your initial thoughts and discuss it further.
Thank you so much, Sheetal, and thank you everybody for inviting me as one of the panelists. This particular thing, which is e-cooking, is actually very, very close to me because ever since I entered into the field of food content creation about 5 years ago, I have been using the induction all the time. In fact, 90% of my cooking is done on the induction, and the rest of the baking, etc., is done using the OTG. And I, of course, have been using the air fryer also since the past 1 year extensively. Coming from my own personal experience, like Chef Tanya shared her experience about how her grandmother, was introduced to the induction and how easily she adopted. I actually have a little different story to share. So I've been using the induction, like I said, and the major reason behind switching from the traditional gas stove to the induction was the flexibility and the portability of the induction, because as a content creator, I'm not always, shooting or making or cooking food in the kitchen. I sometimes like to shoot outdoors. Sometimes I'm shooting in my bedroom where the light is better. So of course, the food that I'm creating is not always in the kitchen. So the most important reason why I switched over or bought an induction stove was the portability factor. and it has been serving me really well. But in spite of that, since my mother has been using the traditional gas stove, so even after 2 through 3 years of using the induction, she also had an induction which she got as a gift from someone, but she never used it. And she had just kept it tucked in a corner of the kitchen. But since we know that in India, a lot of cities now have the green gas supply, so that is what she has been using for a while, and she was really happy with everything until one day the supply was cut off for the entire day, and there was no supply from the government end, and she had to obviously cook food for my family. So she was really stuck up, and by chance I was there at home. So she told me that she has an induction and she wanted to use it, but she was quite skeptical about, how to go about with it. Is the cooking easy, or like it's too technical to understand? And that's why, I told her that it's actually exactly the same way you do it on the gas stove. And I made her try one dish on the induction. And ever since that, she's like that it's been such a breakthrough for her as a homemaker. She's like, she's not a professional cook, but just a homemaker who cooks food for her family every day. But the cut off the supply from the government, the green gas, she was always stuck up what to do, and she had to probably order food from outside. But with the introduction of induction into her kitchen, she now doesn't really have to order food from outside, and the ease with which she can now easily cook on the induction. And sometimes when there are guests over and you don't really want to heat up or put on the stove, and you just want to make sure that the food is served hot. So again, she likes to use the hot plate or the induction to keep the food warm. So that is again a great benefit of using the induction. Now coming to the second part where we talk about the taste profile. So there are few things which using the induction I have realized which have really helped me in achieving 100% same taste profile of all types of foods when I'm working on the induction. First of all is making sure that if I'm making, for example, a curry or anything for that matter, all the ingredients need to be at room temperature. So I think that's something that we like to stick to even when we are cooking on the gas stove, but it's even more important when you're working with the induction. So for example, if you're making a curry and you want to add water to it, you need to make sure that the water is at room temperature. Or if your curry is already cooked and you're adding water at a later stage, then preferably hot water, which you can just warm up in a kettle, and you can probably add that. So all of these small things really ensure that the flavors are retained and the cooking is more even. Similarly, another important point is preheating my vessels. So I had seen earlier when I started using the induction, especially during stir frying or frying, I was not able to achieve the same result. Either I was overcooking, or while frying the oil was not properly heated up. And how I was able to achieve a breakthrough in that was by preheating my utensils. So every time I'm cooking on the induction, I like to put my utensil on it empty for at least a minute, and once it's nicely heated up, that's when I like to add in the oil. And for example, if I'm sorting some vegetables, that's when I add it. And as soon as I add the first few ingredients, I also like to reduce the temperature. So that heat management of going from high to preheat your vessel and then coming to a low where you evenly cook your ingredients has really helped me in achieving very good flavor profile and keeping the nutrients intact as well. So that's another point. And apart from that, of course, stirring frequently, making sure that you're more attentive. These are things that you obviously have to make sure while you're cooking. And these things have really helped me. The only issue which I felt in the beginning, of course, now I don't face it because I already have utensils which work perfectly fine with the induction, was when I started off in our traditional Indian kitchens, we have a lot of different utensils. We have a kadhai, we have a pan, and not all of those pans or kadhais are, flat bottomed. So I definitely needed to invest in the beginning of my usage of the induction in flat bottomed utensils. But that's just the initial investment that we need to do. And once that is done, then you can absolutely, cook anything and everything in those vessels. So I probably just have like 2 flat bottom pans, and I cook from curries to pastas to frying and everything in those pans. So yeah, that's the brief about my experience with e-cooking and using the induction.
Thanks, Tanya. This has been a very interesting discussion, and I think uh, we've heard about automation when we talk about e-cooking in this discussion. We heard about that it's a practice, and it comes, with a little bit of time, energy being spent on it. And once that's sorted, it's easy to get on to the flavors, etc. And we heard about how induction, from just being like a thing of gift and being kept aside when bought in practice, has proven to be a great addition to the kitchen. With this, Jacob, I'd like to bring you in and request you to share your experience with we've heard from Chef Tanya and Tanya Bhatia a lot about induction and the overall experience in their kitchen. Jacob, if you could share a little bit more details about other, e-cooking technologies, electric pressure cooker, while your work, in the cookbooks that you've done across, different countries. How do you think that there's a flavor balancing which, can be done? And what do you see as, gaps uh, which a person needs to be particularly get trained on to actually achieve that kind of a flavor? Yeah.
Yes, it's a difficult question to answer because there's so much subject, like I mentioned, there's so much subjectivity, and we're all aware there's different people like things done in different ways. But I think by and large, like the 2 previous presenters have said, that there's so much adaptability that you're able to do with these electric cooking appliances. And you're able to use things like even these new things that have come about, like air fryers. They're really good for certain processes and getting crispiness, and induction stoves are very good for certain processes. So I think by and large there's so many opportunities, and even with the current stock of electric cooking appliances which exist, I think there's enormous opportunities. There are for sure probably specific areas whereby they can be improved, or the certain specific processes which need new appliances. But yeah, I think by and large they've been pretty well embraced once people start using them, like we've heard. I guess in terms of, there's also I guess one thing that resonates with me, or is kind of come to mind, is sometimes you do things but you don't know why you do them. I'm as guilty as this as anyone else. I just do something. I've been taught in a certain way to do it, and you associate. So say smokiness is a good example, I think, and I'll use an anecdote to describe it. So smokiness, so jollof rice, which is a West African, common in Nigeria, a rice which is cooked in tomatoes and peppers and so forth, a red rice. There's a specific version called party jollof, which has got a very smoky flavor that's often used because people serve it as at parties. So I work with a Cameroonian chef and a Nigerian chef. So traditionally, this might be cooked on charcoal or wood. And so you think the smokiness, has gone into the pot. And I realized when I was working with them, and they were saying they're actually creating smokiness within the pot. So we were working in an electric kitchen at that point, so using hot plates and induction. And there's actually a process of burning. There's oil added, and then the tomato paste was burnt. So this carbonization was created inside the pot. So whereas previously I'd assumed, and I think a lot of people assume, that the smoke is going inside the pot, there's actually the burning is happening within the pot, and then you're layering it on, adding maybe the sauce and adding the rice and so forth, then cooking it, but it still had that magical smoky flavor. So I think sometimes you just associate our smokiness must come from the fire of the smoke, but there's lots of ways. Of course, this varies from person to person in which you can create these things and it's not even a way you assumed it was created. So yeah, I think things like that are to getting to the bottom of it. Of course, it's like I keep saying it's so complex, but these sorts of things, teasing them out is only going to be possible through more research and more experimentation, and as people start to share more stories of their experiences with electric cooking appliances.
Yes, of course. We really need many more people to share, because as we are hearing in this discussion, like, there could be some challenges in the beginning, but at the end of the day, the whole experience of cooking with electricity, induction cooktops, and EPCs could prove to be, a great experience for the households. So, Chef Tanya, I'll come back to you with my question that I had put to you. You mentioned that India is more about like a one pot meal where many a times we see that our rice, our pulses, and even our vegetables are actually pressure cooked in like one pressure cooker, and then we actually separate it and put the tarkas, etc., and like separate the dishes. So having said that, how do you still feel that, like, Jay mentioned that, people, we can create that smoke within the vessel itself also. So that's, what about those charred flavors? What about, people have this inhibition that, when we are going on having our popular street foods, when we are having our daily snacking kind of menus, we can't achieve that flavors on e-cooking. There are people who've given us feedbacks that when we fry our puris, on induction, there is a tendency that the oil will heat up so fast and so quickly that you will have to like stop the flame after a point of time, and there's a chance that it might get burned off, and you would not be able to like handle the process, and the flavors will go for a toss. Then we heard about that when you're frying things, it will be fried from the outside and will remain quite moist. We call it like less cooked from inside. So just your comments on as a chef and as to people from different households also, like how they cook in their routine kitchens. Your comments on that.
So I'll start with that. Whenever we upgrade any technology, there's always a bit of resistance in terms of skill, in terms of understanding, in terms of attitude, everything. So, for example, when from our experiences, let's say, these days we have these combi ovens in kitchens. So, combi oven is one where you have all the technologies. You can steam rice, you can cook your dal makhani in combi ovens, you can steam potatoes, you can make biryanis, you can roast chicken, you can grill chicken, you can make pastas. Almost everything is possible. From momos to idli, almost everything is possible in those combi ovens. So, when we install such an equipment in any kitchen, we chefs ourselves, we undergo a training process where the people from the brand or organization, they come in and they tell us how to operate this machine, and they also show us how to make a couple of basic products, one fried thing, one steamed thing, one rice, one dal. So we ourselves have to go through those kind of trainings whenever we are switching up any model or bringing in more technology. So we cannot expect that anybody in the customer market will be able to switch without any training or without enough education or awareness of the particular. So when you say that, let's say, let's change the gas stove and let's bring in induction. In my experience, I haven't faced any problems in frying anything. And it might be because of the profession I am in. But even my mother, when she uses it, she hasn't really faced any problem. Again, you have to get used to that equipment. You have to understand how it works, how it heats up, which mode you have to set it in, which mode. And even when you change the models of induction, your heat will change, your modes will change, everything changes from one device to the other. It's like changing your phone or changing your car or changing any electric equipment. Even when we change our laptops from one laptop to the other, couple of interface changes. So it always takes a while to get used to it. It takes an effort to understand how this product is working, what more can you do with that product. coming back to your question of asking that how one pot cooking and how one pot cooking, if it is feasible, then it can be also explore the ideas of doing various snacks. Mr. Jacob, I remember he mentioned on his presentation that we have air fryers right now. They're absolutely amazing. I have myself used it. I have it in my home. And the only two equipments which I have in my home kitchen from last 3 years is one electric kettle and one induction. And that's all I use to cook. So electric kettle is for my water and induction is and I can absolutely do whatever I like, from pastas to making momos to steaming, almost everything I can do with that. So it takes a bit of practice and understanding. Even when you're talking about snacks, I don't think it's impossible. It is definitely possible. See, we are just changing how the vessel is getting heated. We are not changing the vessel. Even kadhais today have induction base. In fact, Asian ranges used to be one thing where we used to think, how would we make this induction friendly? Today we have inductions for that also. Now you can toss your wok over an induction which is made specially for Asian woks. So I mean to say that there's nothing which is left from the electric industry. They've given us all the modes. Now it is up to us how we want to explore it, and it's a great revolution. We just have again. We're just changing how the pot is getting heated. We are not changing anything else. We're not changing the ingredients. We're not changing the pot. We're not changing the person who is cooking. So. But yes, when you change the heat, of course, it's the form of cooking, how your food is getting cooked. You have to take a while to understand that equipment and work with it for 1 week, or it will differ in everybody's case. But I think there has to be a behavioral change, more openness towards e-cooking. It's even more accurate in terms of nutrition also. We don't tend to overcook when we're using electric uh, equipments, not all equipments, but couple of them, yes. So you are retaining more better color, better flavors, better nutrition in terms of that. If you are cooking in a handi and if you're making something and it's overcooked, it's gone. The green leaf vegetables, they will start looking black. But let's say that same thing is cooking in a combi oven or in a family setup, let's say in a rice cooker, it is automated. So it will all automatically get switched off. You will see green vegetables, nice green color, flavor would be retained, nutrition would be retained. So yeah, a bit of training is required, a bit of awareness is required for the same.
Thanks, Chef Tanya, for that. Tanya Bhatia, just one last question. I think we are nearing, the close of this discussion. You create recipes, and you mentioned that you're mostly dependent upon induction. Any specific challenges that you see while specifically from the point of achieving flavors and taste for any specific dish types, etc., on e-cooking, induction, and other technologies as well?
Yes, so to answer that, Sheetal, the only limitation which I have faced and I have been facing for a while is with frying. I'm not sure if that's because of the particular brand of induction that I'm using, but what I felt is that my oil, even when I put it at the highest temperature, when I'm frying, deep frying, so the oil heats up, but still I'm not able to get the fuming hot oil which I would ideally get on my traditional gas stove, and how I would want it to be if I'm frying maybe samosas or maybe puris. Because you want initially the oil to be really, really hot, and then maybe you reduce it to a medium heat. So that is definitely a limitation. What I've been doing for that is I usually heat my oil on the gas stove, and when I'm able to achieve a high temperature, then I transfer it onto the induction, because of course when I'm shooting recipes, I want to shoot it on the induction. Like I said, I'm not always shooting in the kitchen. So I first heat up the oil on the gas stove, and then I transfer it to my induction, and then I'm able to fry, of course. But if I fry it completely or heat up the oil completely on the induction, then definitely I'm not able to achieve the same results. The issue that I've been facing is that whatever deep fried item I'm making, it tends to absorb a lot of oil, and it's not absolutely how I would want it to be the way it is on the traditional gas stove. But this is the hack that I've been using. I usually heat up the oil on the gas stove and then use it on the induction. Yeah.
I think Chef Tanya wants to make a point here.
Yeah, I think Sanya has rightly mentioned this thing that how induction doesn't heat up to a certain thing. So I would like to mention here that there are inductions coming in the market, and every induction model goes up to a certain heat. Like in my kitchen, we have three inductions. One will heat up to 1200 watts, one goes up to 2400 watts, and one goes up to 1400 watts. So I need to know that for what I'm buying my induction for, and which induction would be used for what. So if I'm frying, let's say, I would definitely go with the 2400 watt one. But if I'm boiling the water, and if I don't really need it very quick, I can just use a 1200 watt, or for warming the milk, or for making the tea, for example. So these inductions are coming. In fact, we have the warmers also, which just keep the food warm, and you can't really cook on those inductions these days. So this awareness has to be brought in by the brands, or people who are selling inductions or any electrical equipment, because nobody would know this unless you actually have 5 inductions kept in a row and you're seeing the difference
Correct.
in
Yeah.
between them. So absolutely, it's a very, very valid point.
Thank you so much. I can see a lot of information which is being exchanged on the chat, but it's mostly with respect to introductions. So please do that. The whole idea of Talk Series is to, leverage this platform, for enabling the transition and penetration of e-cooking. So this connect really helps there. Thank you to all the panelists today, for the fabulous points on taste. And I think this session has been mostly about a lot of myths that we generally carry about taste and e-cooking. And I particularly heard very clear points upon the benefits of automation and its impact on taste with respect to recipes that that can be pressure cooked, rice recipes, dals, etc. We also heard about that, of course. We every, like for every technology in any other sector, it requires a bit of hand holding and understanding at the beginning. But when we specifically talk about flavors, for e-cooking, there has been a general myth that you can't achieve the same flavors on the e-cooking technologies, which we heard doesn't act as a challenge or barrier. And we also heard about that a lot of information and awareness creation needs to be there under the initiative of MECS program through these talk series, and a lot about what Dr. Nick had shared in the beginning, which is Modern Energy Cooking Forum, and our regular awareness creation activities that we are doing in states and with different stakeholders. We are trying to create more and more awareness about the benefits and awareness around e-cooking. Dr. Nick, any last remarks that you would like to make here?
Thank you, Sheetal. I mainly actually want to express thanks from Jacob, because I know his computer, he's texted me to say his computer's frozen, so he can't give his own thanks, but he's appreciated the discussion and found it really interesting. No, I'm really grateful, and I think thanks to Tanya and Tanya, it's been really great to hear their voices and to hear their enthusiasm and their own experiences. I suspect we all have stories of people who have gone from being absolutely anti to being completely converted. And often it comes from a certain experience that they have that surprised them. So I think that they're good to promote. But yeah, I think then we should be doing more sharing of tips and skills and helping everyone to go on this journey themselves. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining us, and we've already shared the details of the the upcoming Modern Energy Cooking Forum. Do register for that. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you. Bye. Thank you all.